Welcome to the In Search of More podcast. I am your host, Ellie Nash. Join me weekly on my quest for more from myself and more from this world. We'll see you on the other side. All right. Round 3. Welcome, Omar.
Thank you for having me, Ellie. As always, I'm excited to be here and excited to see you.
So the last time we did a podcast, we had this awful couch here.
Oh.
Remember that?
So uncomfortable.
My foot fell asleep.
Well, it's this whole, I'm trying to get comfortable in the couch kind of thing, and these chairs are awesome. Like I feel like I'm free.
Liberated.
I'm liberated.
Your soul has been liberated.
It certainly has.
Yeah, that podcast was definitely an hour shorter than it could have been.
Okay.
If not for the couch. So we'll make up for it now.
Okay. All
But
right. I'm ready.
I'm sure some things have changed
Let's
since
flow.
then anyway.
Oh, yeah.
You know something? That podcast we did was the first one was filmed. It was right when I started filming the podcast. It was the first one where ayahuasca was discussed as a conversation.
Yeah, I remember.
Less than a year ago.
I remember. And I remember you were like, let's do this. Let's have this conversation. I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'm ready to talk about plant medicine.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about it for the first few years.
Yeah. I get that. I didn't talk about it for quite a few years before I don't know if it was quite a few. It probably took me about a year to talk about it.
Right. It's like this big thing that no word should be put to. In general, plant medicine experiences, there's no words to really describe it. So, I don't know. I'm happy I took the time.
Yeah, the thing is, there are words now to describe it. At the time, the reason I wasn't talking about it is because there was still that connection with recovery, right? And so for me, there was that, is it okay for me to share my experience with ayahuasca, with mushrooms, and is it going to conflict with my recovery? And that's when I made the choice. I had to make the choice of, if I'm not honoring the 12 steps, then it's better for me to step away, right? Because
you had the podcast that was focused on recovery.
I had the Share podcast. Right. It was focused on recovery. And, the people that followed me were, recovery people, right? And so I wanted to be genuine, and I always want to be genuine. And for me right now, I feel like it's important for me to honor the medicine. It has done more for me than anything else that I've used, plant medicine, other than the weekend we just had.
Yeah, we'll talk about it in a second. I think for me, it wasn't so much about recovery that was holding me back. It's just, I felt like I was still trying to figure it out. First of all, in general, with the plant medicine experience, it's just difficult to put some of them into words. So that's one thing.
Very difficult.
Right, just to encapsulate it. It always feels like we're limiting it when we put it into words. But the second is that, kind of when I'm working on things, I don't talk about it that much. I always talk about it right afterwards. That's what it feels like. So that's why I don't talk about relationship much. Still trying to figure out who are we supposed to get along with someone, with someone we're married to. But as I figured that out, I figured out in silence, relative silence. And then I dropped these little hints like I just did now, and then start introducing the fact that maybe one day I'll start talking about relationship stuff and some things that I may have learned along the treacherous path.
You have learned quite a few things, Ellie.
So let's talk about plant medicines.
Okay, let's talk about I like the shift. We're not going there.
Okay, in terms of why you're here, you came down the first Adama retreat.
This is the very first, yeah.
Right, we just had the first Adama retreat, just finished a few hours ago. So we decided, hey, why don't we sit down?
And have a conversation.
And with the afterglow or the hangover, depending on someone's reference point.
Well, it's amazing how things bring you back,
So what made you come to the retreat?
Oh, it was a calling, just like everything else. When we talk about even hey, let's talk about plant medicine. The best thing you can say is that at some point, if plant medicine is going to be a part of your life, you're going to get called to it. Okay, somehow there's going to be a conversation. And when I saw you and Mayor doing the Instagram post, I saw it. I'm on Instagram. I see you and Mayor talking about it. At first I saw you guys together. I didn't have the volume on. Okay, then I saw you guys together. I go, what are they talking about? Because I get FOMO. Right? I get jealous. I say, oh, Mayor, Ellie, oh, what are they talking about? Right? And then I saw that retreat. I immediately messaged you. Okay, I'm in. You know, oh, okay, all right. It was a calling. Not only did that, in my last ayahuasca journey, the medicine made it very, very clear to me. It says, you're an elderman now, okay? Like you're now being initiated into what you could say is fatherhood or grandfather energy, okay? Where you will be, you know, sharing your wisdom and insight with others as that elderman, as an elder male, right? You will be impacting men, helping them go from that boy to a man, okay? Because there's a lot of men that are 30 years old, 40 years old, that are still not men. They're still in that very childlike boy state, and they need a proper elderman to help them expand. And so when I saw that it was a men's retreat, of course, I was like, I got to be there for that, right? And of course, for me, it's about being of service, and it's also about listening to my intuition. And my intuition said, get down there.
It's also about having a good time. You like to have a good time.
I do love spending time with you. And
I didn't mean that. You like fun.
I do like
awesome.
having fun.
Yeah. It's like
it did seem like it was going to be fun.
Well, no, you make healing fun. You know what we used to do before you fired me as a client, when we're doing the weekly coaching calls, it never felt like that. It felt like just getting on the phone with a friend, and then you'd hit me with the zinger, like, 45 minutes or an hour into the conversation. So what do you think about that? I was like, oh, right, this is a coaching call.
Ellie, you do bring up the fact that I fired you as a client. Is there a little resentment there, or
no? Actually, A lot of appreciation.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I respect your game.
Okay.
So a lot of people get someone, and then, like once they have a client, it's like client for life, and then it makes it awkward for the. Like, so what happens in many relationships, what I find, let's say with a therapist, someone gets tremendous value from them, and then you appreciate that, hey, I got so much value from this guy, from this relationship. And every single week, there's a call on the calendar. And then if for that to change, the client has to tell the therapist, hey, I don't want this to continue anymore, but why don't they want to? Because they're not getting value now, but they were for a while, so it feels like they're not expressing appreciation. This is what it often felt like for me. And with your approach is much different. Hey, let's do 8 sessions and see where we go. Let's do another 4 sessions and see where we go. So with you is always, like, the conversation was, do we continue, not do we stop? So no, I respect it. I say it as actually a way of complimenting you, so people know you're legit.
Well, and also too, just that came out of an ayahuasca experience, a retreat that you and I attended together. Like I remember, and I still remember one of the most. It's so beautiful. We were outside after the ceremony was over at 6:00 in the morning. We're lying on the floor of this beautiful villa in Uvita, Costa Rica.
Yep.
You're holding my hand, okay, and you're like, Omar, I trusted you like 95%, I think that was the percentage that you said. I trust you 100% now. You're my brother, and I'm getting emotional right now just thinking about it, because that's when I knew. I go, Ellie's not my client. He's my brother. Sometimes he's like my son. Sometimes he's like my father, and I was like, whenever you need me, however you need me, I'm here. And that's also part of why I'm down here too. I wanted to be here. I'm not charging to be down here. I'm here because I wanted to be a part of it, and I want to serve, and I want to help, in any way that I can for you, because of everything that you've done for me. You know what I mean? And that connection that we have, right? It's beyond client relationships. Like the relationship I had with Frady, with your wife. You know what I mean? And for you to trust me to work with Frady, you know what I mean? Like, that's family, you're my family.
Awesome. Likewise. Even your dogs.
Even my dogs.
All 6 of them.
All 4 of the dogs, 3 of the cats.
Gotcha.
We do have a bit of a ranch.
Yeah, they have a little ranch. You said something earlier about this whole idea of, working with men in their 30s and 40s that kind of haven't become a man.
Yes.
So there's 2 ways to understand that. One is they haven't gone from child to adult, or they're more feminine than masculine. Which one?
Child to adult.
Child to adult.
Child to adult. No, not tapping into the feminine. It's and these are men that are married and have children, okay, and they don't know how to express themselves like adults.
Right,
Okay?
30, 35-year-old teenagers.
Yeah,
Yes.
correct,
that's what-
correct. And so that is what has been the universe, or God, or however you want to see it. God has been bringing these men into my life, that need that push, right? That help. My energy as a masculine is softer because I've for many years I was off balance. Okay, so my feminine energy, I had more feminine energy than I had masculine energy, and through plant medicine and through my own personal development, my own coaching, okay, I've balanced that energy out. I've reconciled my relationship with my father, okay, even though he's been gone now for 13, 14 years now, right? I've reconciled that relationship and balanced out my masculine energy. And that's when I realized I need to start working with more men, and I wanted to start calling that in, okay? And so that was even my approach is still softer with men. Like, even though I will push them and I will invite them to
But it's a very patient.
It is.
Pleasant,
I have
yes.
I have a style that the men that I work with, they appreciate it, because it's not like man up, okay? That's not that energy. I don't have that energy, and I'll never have that energy, So it's stepping into the masculine, being, and all my clients respect that about me. They go, "Oh my, you're so confident, you're so bold," and I go, "Yeah, but this has taken years."
In general, you, outside of the coaching world, you connect with women easier than men, or men easier?
Oh
than
man, women.
women. You do, right? That's what I thought.
Man, it's that's always been the case. It's I've always felt safer around women, more comfortable around women, more vulnerable around women. I've had tons of I would say half my clientele is women. They feel very safe with me. They feel very comfortable with me. Jewish women, Jewish wives, okay, where in some cases that's taboo to work with a man potentially, right? And their husbands have said, "You got to work with my wife. You got to, that trust is there."
Right.
And I think it's that feminine side of me, that feminine energy that they feed off of. So there's that safety factor, right? So that's one of my gifts.
Makes sense. I experienced that. You're the medicine of love.
I believe that love is the medicine, right? And so I work with that. I work with the medicine of love.
I hear it. I've seen it work. Question about the retreat. What did you think about it?
The retreat was
Honestly, like, as feedback, even though the microphones are on.
I literally have not one negative thing to say. We were talking right before the interview. We were talking with Mayor Kay about the flow of it. I've never, one of the cool things was, at some point I realized, I don't know why I didn't put 2 and 2 together, but at some point I realized that I coached Mendel, I coached Mayor, I coached you, right? And here I am at this retreat, and 4 of us are facilitating this, and I was like, wow, how beautiful is that? Like, I could see that grandfather, that father energy, right? The fruits of it, right? And there was never a time where there was an ego conflict, or there was there was no words that needed to be said. We just flowed. We knew exactly what the other person needed, and we flowed, right? And it brought so much healing and so much. One of the members that was at the retreat, he even said that. He goes, "How wonderful it is to be a retreat where there's no ego," right? And to hear that, right, it told me we were flowing, right? So I have nothing negative to say. It was a men's retreat about men, for men. And it was an invitation to step into the masculine. Okay. And so the things that we did, I don't know if you wanted to talk about them or just
Are they like super secret
no,
sauce?
No, yeah, super secret sauce. You know, the doing cold plunges, teaching them how to do hape, teaching them, you know, sacred combat. There was these things that for me were so far out of my comfort zone, right? Where even though I was there for service, I was also participating.
Yeah, I got a lot from it.
I got tons.
I got a lot
from it. It was beautiful. Like I got 0 feet. The food was amazing.
Yeah, like often I associate, like I'm not the most social. Like I talk in this setting, but I'm not like a social guy. Because I associate people with draining my energy. Like too many people around, I was like, it's gonna sap my energy. And there was something about doing it in this way. Mayor likes to use the word container, but he's good. He creates a good container.
He does create a good container. Amazing.
So that, like, there was something about this container that felt like it was bringing me energy, not draining my energy. So I got to figure out what that is so that I can bring more of that into my life. Because oftentimes I see a room full of people, I'm like, oh shoot, like the energy is about to be drained. And
well, I told you what that was. You know, it was for us, you know, Mendel and Mayor and myself, we're basically running interference for you. You know what I mean? Where you can be in the container without people like, Ellie, you know, whereas it's people mention that, like they want a piece of Ellie. They want to talk to you and they want to spend time with you and they want your wise counsel, right? And that's a lot of energy, you know, heading your way. So when you have,
so I need like a posse, is what you're saying.
You have a posse,
right.
right? So so you send us in there and we're running interference, right? And we're doing our part, okay? And so you can benefit from being in that container because the energy was strong. It was just powerful energy in there. So you could feed off of that because it's not coming at you. It's almost like the energy was like rising up. Okay, the frequency was going up instead of coming at you, right? So that's most likely why you were feeling like, this is cool, I can dig this.
Yeah, and it was an observation I made after the first time we did the cold plunge, because I introduce people to cold plunge all the time. You know, I have one at my home and I'm super excited about it. Sometimes a guest comes for a podcast. It's like, hey, why don't we jump into the cold plunge? So I see a lot of people do it for the first time. And, you know, mathematically, not 100% succeed in, you know, the time measurement that I think most cold plungers use is 3 minutes. And most do not get there on the first one. And here we had a group of, you know, 11 participants and 4 more of us, so 15 or 16, Kevin, the camera guy, whatever it was, let's say 16 guys. And every single guy got to 3 minutes. And I came to the conclusion that the only way that's possible is if we're drawing energy from the others. That each one of these, if they were introduced the way I regularly introduce people, like, hey, this guy's in my house, why don't you jump into the cold plunge? They 100% wouldn't get to 3 minutes. But somehow in that setting, and then I kept noticing that over the weekend, and it's like, wow, there is a way to get energy from people and not be drawn from. And this whole introvert extrovert thing doesn't complete it, because sometimes we think of an introvert as someone who loses energy around people. An extrovert is someone who gets energy around people. And I often associate with the introvert bucket, but I was in the extrovert bucket this week. Not extrovert, just as in the person who was getting energy, not losing energy from being around people. So I got to figure out what that is.
I think you just described it beautifully, right? That's what's beautiful about tapping into the masculine, because there's that competitiveness. That's just, it's in our DNA to be competitive, right? How else can you protect your family, defend what's yours, right? Be successful. To a certain degree, you have to have a level of pride and ego, and you have to have, strength, right? And courage. And so that spirit of competition, right, invites you, right, to push yourself, right? If there's nobody around, nobody's paying attention, nobody cares, you know what I mean? I'm in the cold plunge for 30 seconds. Okay, that's enough. Okay, no, I'm out. Nobody's watching. You know what I mean? I'll sometimes say that, you know, where someone is just pushing themselves and they're achieving, and there's all these things that they're doing, and they don't have a way of connecting or feeling accomplished, right? It's because they don't have someone there to tell them, hey, you're doing a great job. You know, you're doing well. It's almost like you're in the middle of the arena. You've got the football. You run, you know, past the touchdown, right? You lift your hands up, and you hear crickets.
But it's actual energy, meaning it's not just a distraction. Because one argument could be made that you're in the cold plunge, it's painful. So if you can talk to someone or someone there, they can distract you. It can make it a little bit easier. But it doesn't feel like that to me. It feels like an actual drawing of energy from the other person. Like
No,
we're actually
it's like what I was trying to
plugging
describe.
into a
You know,
battery
you've
or
got
something.
one guy that just crossed the finish. You know, he just
Right,
scored a touchdown. There's
so the
nobody there,
competition-
and he's like, "Why would I even do this again? Why would I even play?" Now you have 11 guys around you while you're in the cold plunge, right? And they're like supporting you, and there's a guy with a stopwatch, and there's eye contact, and like, you can do this, man, you got this, you know, and the guy's freaking out, you know, and then at some point he surrenders to it.
Yeah.
They surrendered to it. And they talk about my hands are pain. I can feel there's so much pain in my hands. There's so much pain in my feet, right? But you know, I pushed through, and they would say that, I pushed through, and there was that sense of accomplishment, that sense of camaraderie, right? And then
We all did something hard together. Yeah.
we all did something hard together. And today, which was day 3, and it was the last day of the cold plunge, there wasn't a moment where somebody was like, okay, so who's next to go into the cold plunge? We're talking 40 degrees, 40 degrees, bunch of guys standing outside in the morning at 8 o'clock in the morning with their towel on. And as soon as one guy got out, the next guy jumped right in before another guy got in. Like, it was to watch this. It was like, whoa. The other thing was the Temazcal, which what I was telling you about that, you know, and this is what I needed, right? It was
The
like
sweat lodge.
The sweat lodge, right? That was the push. I had done a sweat lodge in Costa Rica many, many years ago. And I went with my wife. It was very early in my personal development journey. And because my wife, she's big on personal development. At the time, it was just 12 steps for me. When we
You gotta
met,
say it again. Someone can cut that really poorly, and it can end up in issues with your wife. And I don't want that to happen.
What do you mean?
Because you said like, my wife, she's big on personal development. I just want to help a brother out. I don't.
My wife is not big at all.
I know.
All right. She is.
But all women have this complex, especially the smaller ones.
Not mine.
Oh,
Not even close.
so she hasn't told you about this
She's very
yet.
confident in herself, you know, but she's always been small. She's always been petite. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
So she's always been big on personal development. Okay. Marcella, I love you. So here's the thing. When I was just doing 12 steps when we met. Okay. And then now we're going to celebrate 10 years married, March of next year. Right.
Congrats.
And so when we first met, she was taking coaching courses, and she was learning how to make sourdough bread, and she was doing acupuncture, and she's a yoga instructor. And I just go to meetings and I have a job. And at some point I was like, I gotta start stepping up, you know? And so she's like, hey, you know, I'm going to go to a sweat lodge. Maybe you want to go? And I'm like, yeah, I'll go. I'm claustrophobic. Okay.
Can we explain the sweat lodge a little bit? Because if a listener may not understand.
Okay. So sweat lodge
Is dark.
is either a dome. Okay. So this one was a dome. Some are like a teepee. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But it is dark, and it is completely enclosed. And there's a pit in the middle of this sweat lodge where they start putting these hot rocks into this pit, and they start pouring water on it. Meanwhile,
So kind of like a ceremonial dark sauna.
it is a ceremonial dark sauna that lasts for an hour and a half. Okay, between an hour and a half, and you're in there on the ground, surrounded by people. Okay, like there's no room. Like you can't just lie down, and you're kind of like cramped in there, and you've got bodies all around you.
This one at the retreat was pretty packed in.
This one was
The first one you did was also
the first
packed in.
one was packed in.
Got it.
Okay. Now back then, I had not pushed myself very far. Okay, and I didn't realize what I was embarking on, but I could hardly breathe. It's dark. I'm claustrophobic. I can't get out.
This was before any plant medicine.
This is before I started doing coaching. This is before, again, I was just going to meetings. Okay, sure, I was sponsoring guys, but I hadn't started my journey. And then boom, you throw me right in the deep end of the pool,
right,
in a sweat lodge. You know, like, if anyone's listening to this, if you've never done a sweat lodge, you know, do a little investigating before you do it, because it is not easy, right? Especially, it was probably one of the more challenging things that we did this weekend, was the sweat lodge, for me and for some of the other guys, you know. So again, I'd done that already, and when I heard that you were going to be doing the sweat lodge, and I was like,
yeah, you're trying to get
I
out
even
of it.
told you, I go,
I hope there's not enough space.
yeah, I hope there's not. You said, well, you know, there might not be enough space. Perfect. I'll be the guy that's out. Okay, I'll be there. I'll chuck the rocks in for you if you want. And so this time, and what's funny is somehow I heard you say, it's 3 hours. And I was thinking, in Costa Rica, was it 3 hours? It sure did feel like it was 3 hours, you know? Is it? And I was like, wow, that's a long time.
Because the guy had told me the ceremony is 3 hours.
Okay.
So the whole ceremony was, but the actual part in the sweat lodge
was not. Right. It was between an hour and a half.
So I did say 3 hours.
You said 3 hours.
I didn't realize all this.
You said 3 hours.
I did. I didn't realize all this.
Freaked me out, man. And so I'm like freaked out. And then he's.
I think 3 hours we all would have died.
No. I was, if it would have been 3 hours, I would have been outside with Naftali. Okay, like no question.
So your ego's not that big. You would have
no,
got out. Okay.
absolutely not.
All the men with the big egos would have been dead.
I know my limits, right?
Yeah.
But you know what's interesting, and this is a testament to mindset. Okay, which is another thing that we learned, which is when he said, "Okay, guys, we're going to be doing 4 rounds, 15 minutes each." I go, "That's an hour." What? See? What? He goes, "Yeah, 4 15-minute rounds, right? And then we'll have breaks in between." My mind just went to a different place. There was this relief.
Right. Had you heard we're going in an hour,
right?
Like that's a long time.
That's a long time.
But if you heard 3 hours, you're gearing up for that for a couple of weeks.
I'm gearing up for 3 hours. I'm you know, and I'm 52 years old right now. I got to pee all the time. I'm thinking, how am I going to be in this sweat lodge for 3 hours without needing to pee? You know, so I'm freaking out about that. I'm freaking out about being there. Freaking out I'm claustrophobic, right? And at the time back then, right, like I had these horrible allergies on my legs, right? So when I got out of the Temescal, my legs were just completely, just like I had like breakouts all over my legs, you know? So I just had this, literally I was tormenting myself about the sweat lodge on this retreat. And that was the one that I needed, because I went in, I sat down. As soon as he said an hour, then I was like, I calmed myself down. I didn't drink any water while I was in there. And I just remember when we got to like the 4th round, that's when I was like, man, I'm ready to get out of this thing. Like I am ready. I'm so ready to get out of this thing. And I'm watching Michael facilitating this. He's sitting in lotus position, singing and playing a drum. Okay. And I was like,
he was chilling.
And he's chilling.
Totally chilling.
He's talking to you. How's everybody doing? Okay, now I'm going to sing this song. And I mean, I was like, there's no way I'm coming out of this thing. Like, there's no way I'm leaving this sweat lodge, right? My ego said, don't you move. All right. You're not going to pee. You're not stepping out of this thing. You're going to do this. You're going to make it. Right. And so I just got into a place where I slowed everything down. I didn't move a whole lot. I just breathed into the experience. And I just remembered what's the key to getting through any tough experience. It's the breath, right? So I felt so accomplished when we finally came. I didn't cheat. I didn't run out. As soon as he said it's done, I gave myself permission to get out, right? And so that was the beauty of it. It's like we just keep pushing through these different experiences. That was the tough one for me, but having that support of the men in there, like, sure, I didn't want to let me down, but I didn't want to let them down.
Right.
There is something very powerful about there's that letting me down, but I don't want to let these guys down.
So what did you said that this the Sweat Lodge was the most important for you or the most powerful for you? What did you learn about yourself from the Sweat Lodge?
Well, the thing was, what I learned was that the first time that I did it, it was a testament to my own mental health, my own belief systems about myself, the work that I had already done on myself, what I could endure, what my nervous system could endure, and I was running all that through my mind. And and this was not even 20%, not even 20% as difficult as that first Sweat Lodge. And when I came out, I was like, I felt so good, right? Because I realized how much I'd grown. That was really the key. I was like, wow, I've really grown over the last 10 years. Like, it's unbelievable. Like, each one of these activities, Sacred Combat. How about, you want to talk about Sacred Combat?
Want to talk about
You don't want to talk about Sacred Combat?
Do you have a resentment about the Sacred Combats?
I might.
Okay. you can get it out there.
I didn't want to do Sacred Combat. You know what I mean? Sacred Combat is basically two guys with boxing gloves and headgear on, 2 minutes going at it, and I was like doing this. And it was funny because I took the role immediately. As soon as Mayor said, okay, somebody grab the gloves. I've got the gloves. Now I'm the glove guy. I'm in the service position.
Right, I don't have to do anything.
I don't have to do anything now, right? Yeah. Like I've got the gloves.
You made one mistake though.
What was that?
I was the other guy who
grabbed
the
gloves. So there I am putting gloves on, and my adrenaline was pumping because I was like, I hope nobody calls me out. I don't want to get in this ring. I don't want to do this. I'm too old. I'm going to get hurt. La, 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 la. And then it's almost over. And of course, somebody says, what about Omar? Right? What about Ellie? And then I saw you. I look across and you got this smile on your face. You're like, I was like, oh, man. So many feelings, right? Because first of all, you're my brother, And number two, you're like twice my size. Your arm reach is so much longer, right? And I know you know how to box. Okay. So I was like, this is going to suck, but I wasn't about to back down either.
Yeah.
And the thing was too, again, that moment was perfect because I think if it would have been maybe a little early on, I was like, I would have like drawn my hard line. I'm not getting in there. I'm just not going to do it. But at this point, every single guy in that retreat
you kind of
got
going, right.
in the ring.
You're going off the same theme.
Yes.
Right. Kind of what happened with the ice plunge. It's like everyone building off of everyone else. Like
I
with
was
the
like,
last two guys.
I can't let them down. You know what I mean? And yeah, I kind of knew at some point I couldn't get past your arm reach. Okay. And I appreciate you did not pummel me. Okay. I know you were holding back, but you got a good shot in there. You got the rib shot. Okay. That one I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to continue, but the adrenaline kicked in and I was able to continue. And then that last headshot where we were like, had, I don't know, 10 seconds left, whatever it was, where I almost fell back, right? And the coolest part about that, coolest part about that whole thing was like, that didn't even hurt. Like I felt the disconnect. Like I was like, I'm going down, but I know he hit me, but it doesn't hurt, right? And I think that's the thing that men need to understand, right? It's like you can get hit. All right, it's not going to kill you, right? And chances are it might not even hurt, right? If anything, it's just going to knock you off your game, right? I got right back up.
Right. The first time I sparred a few years ago, that was the first thing I learned is like a punch it's just a punch.
It's just a punch.
Yeah, I mean, some punches are, you know,
the last punch.
No, but in general, a punch is just a punch. It's not. A punch is not usually the end of the world.
It's not, and I think it's important, you know. And again, just based on being at this retreat, I think it's important that men, at some point, get punched in the face. You know, like. It'd been a long time since I've been punched in the face.
This is not very good advertising for the retreat.
I think it's great advertising for the retreat because
that you're going to get punched in the face.
That you're going to get punched in the face because you know what?
Not necessarily. There's agreements. There's agreements, and some people chose not to do headshots.
That's another thing that you can bring up. But life's going to hit you a whole lot harder than that punch.
Right, but what I learned a lot from the Sacred Combat was the kind of the parameters that could be set around things. That it's not an all or nothing proposition. Like, here we're going to fight, and this is, you know, whoever kills the other person first. It's like, no, there's a way to do it. I guess that's why it's called Sacred Combat, in a sacred way with appropriate agreements and consideration and communication and referee. I mean, I guess to some degree, professional boxing is like that. They just agree to kill each other.
Yeah, no.
But there
professional boxing.
Well, there's no groin shots. There's no shots.
Oh no,
in the back
there's
of the head.
those agreements. Yes,
right.
But no, what you were referring to is, and that's what Mayer is masterful at, is just holding that container and holding those rules. Okay, so you know. What percentage do you guys want to go? Okay, do you want to go 50%? Do you want to go 60%?
Can we talk about Mayer for a second?
Yeah.
This is not just a man crush, right? This guy's legitimately excellent at what he does.
No, there's a little bit of a man crush. You know what I mean? He's a good-looking guy. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? He's in great shape. You know what I mean? But besides that, okay, like, I don't have a problem saying how good I am at what I do. I even say great at what I do. You know what I mean? I appreciate my own greatness, right? But when being at the retreat and watching Mayer do his breath work and how he...
Not watching you participated. I participated.
Yeah, sorry. Participating in his breath work.
You had a full-on...
But I had a full psychedelic experience. I was crying. I was bawling in it. Okay, I had no idea what was expected, what was going to happen in that experience. It was.
You've done a lot of breath work?
No.
Oh, you haven't done a ton of breath work?
I've never done like an actual breath work ceremony like that.
Got it. Okay.
I've done some breath work to kind of prepare you, like, you know, yoga has like pranayama, that kind of thing. You kind of sit in a circle and breathe in through your nose and that kind of thing. And for me, it's always kind of, I couldn't get into the breath work stuff because it seemed a little bit soft and a little bit hocus pokey. You know what I mean? It was Mayer's blew my mind. All right, he starts with this loud music and he starts yelling and he's like getting everybody primed and pumped and everybody's lying on the floor with eye masks on and loud music, you know, and you just felt like, whoa, something amazing is about to happen and it's going to go deep.
No, I legitimately think everyone should attend a breathwork of his, I think.
No question.
So I've done breathwork with a lot of people and there's only two people. I don't like using the term best because there's no such thing as best, because there's different things for different people. Like, what's the best food? I don't know. Like, it depends where you're at. But in terms of like the quality of experience, I put him top 3, and the other 2 guys, one has 50 years experience and one has 30. Legit. I mean, that's what I've seen. I'm just wondering to someone else. That's why I said it might just be a man crush. I don't know.
It might. But I will say that besides the man crush, okay, it was the again, when we're talking every single section, right? There was the breath work, there was the sacred combat, there was the sacred drama. There were all these. Mayer had full control, right? And I can. Okay, let's go beyond that. I respect when someone knows what they're doing. That's what it is. It's more than anything else. It's like.
Right.
I
Respect
see you.
The game. Yeah.
I see you. I respect. my respect. And so with the sacred combat thing too, if there were no rules, if those rules did not exist, if those agreements did not exist, there's no way I would allow myself to get into that ring. Okay, the only reason I got in is because we were going to agree. Are there going to be headshots or no headshots?
Right,
Is it
for sure.
is it 50%? Is it 60%? Let's agree to what it's going to be, right? I even looked at you and I said, let's do a little sparring, all right? You were like, we're cool. And there was that, and there's no grudge between us, so I wasn't threatened in any way, right? So there was those agreements and those parameters that created the safety. And every one of those guys felt safe.
So I'm wondering if that maybe answers my earlier question about being able to draw energy from the group instead of feeling like my energy is being drained by the group. If the original, I guess, intentions or agreements that Mayor set at the beginning of the weekend, remember that?
Yeah.
Right when we started.
When we sat around the fire.
Yeah. So right when we kind of set that, like maybe that's what allowed me to say like, hey, this is a place I can draw energy from and not feel like there were certain agreements. Everyone spoke. Hey, this is cool. That's cool. We're good. We're all line. Like he had his stuff that he brought to the table, but also the stuff that invited everyone else to participate in as well. So I wonder if that's what created it. Meaning, once you're talking about the sacred combat and the rules around that.
For this, like from a coaching perspective, okay, it's absolute freedom. Okay, does not give you freedom, and it doesn't give you peace of mind.
It's chaos.
It's chaos. Okay, when I have boundaries, when I have limits, when I create boundaries, when I create limits for myself, I am free inside that container that I've created for myself, right? That's what makes you feel safe. Like when I think about my own home, right? I have 2 acres, but my 2 acres are not completely fenced around. About an acre is fenced around my house. And so the dogs and the cats, they're completely free. The doors are open. They can come in and out. Why? Because they have a container that keeps them safe. It keeps them protected. It keeps them within. It keeps the coyotes out, right? And keeps the dogs in, right? And so if it's a free-for-all, it's automatically a threat, okay? It's like I can do whatever I want. That's not real freedom. That's chaos. That's mayhem. That is me on my own, right? When I have the right container, the right boundaries, the right limits, then I'm free within those limits. I can do whatever I want. And that's basically, what went down.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. I got to, outside of having a posse, I got to figure out how I can.
Well, listen, if it wouldn't have been for that, well, I can't say because there was a lot of flow in the retreat, but the fire, the fire ceremony, okay, at the beginning of the retreat. So the very first thing we do is we sit, and I'm going to keep mentioning Mayor because he's the one who's leading all this stuff, right? But he was like, okay, guys, we're going to sit down. We're going to talk about agreements, right? And as soon as he laid out all the agreements, which are basically the rules of engagement here, then the guys would chime in and they would, I don't know about this. Well, let me ask a question about that. And then all of it got resolved over the fire pit. And once those agreements were locked in, we went in for dinner and it was like we knew each other our whole lives. There was like this freedom of expression and they were talking, people were talking and communicating, and boom, all of a sudden, all that kind of anxiety, that anxiousness, that social anxiety, that kind of like, these are a bunch of guys I don't know. I wonder how this weekend's going to be. Is it going to be, uncomfortable? Yeah. It's almost like right after that, it cut through almost all of that discomfort and we went right into the retreat.
Right. I was all in my head before those agreements about how this is going to work religiously, right? Because most of the guys who came were from, I think pretty much all were Jewish. I think most from a religious background, but not all were practicing today. Mm-hmm. So how is this going to work? Because the prayer can be traumatizing for one and necessary for the other. For the other's way of life. Mm-hmm. So how is this going to jive? And somehow during the course of that initial conversation, everyone came on the same page about, hey, this is how we're going to practice it. Respect those who choose not to and those who choose to, and still manage to maintain a schedule that everyone can live with, but not create something that someone would be traumatizing to someone else. And I thought that was neat and that wasn't just, Mayor didn't create the agreement, he created the space for that conversation to happen and everyone to really feel like they can flesh it out and get to a space that, hey, what's going to happen over the next 3 days is I'm going to be okay with it. And it's hard to do when everyone is from literally the same religious community.
Right.
Trying to practice the same thing to get everyone on the same page about that. And here you had people with radically different lifestyles and some with very strong opinions on both sides of the issue. I want prayer service. I don't want prayer service. And somehow coming to a place that I don't want it to happen. I don't want to attend a prayer service. Another saying, yes, I would like there to be a prayer service, and somehow to come to a place like, hey, this can work for everyone, and it flowed seamlessly. But I ran through those scenarios a bunch of times over the weekend, just imagining that there was going to be a lot of tension over some of the religious stuff, but there wasn't any.
There was none.
None.
From that fire pit, from that conversation, from those agreements. Okay, the guards that those guys had up when they came into that fire circle, okay, by the end of it, they put down their swords. And it never came up again.
It's true.
Nobody was like...
No one had anything to defend.
Nothing.
Right.
Zero. And I think this is another aspect of stepping into the masculine, which is we haven't learned how to communicate. We haven't learned how to express ourselves. We haven't learned how to even compromise. Okay, no, it has to be this way, and if it's not this way, well, it's, no. There was none of that. There was men having conversations about what they could agree to and what they could not agree to, right? And once it was done, the boundaries were set. Freedom. And there was never a moment where any of it came up. Is this kosher? Is it not kosher? Is it time to pray? Not to pray? Is it okay? Zero. Every person knew, okay, at this time, this is what's been set aside for doing prayer. Okay, great, perfect. And this is the space to do meditation. And everyone just gravitated to their spot. It was just, it flowed. It was beautiful, right? And yeah. So for me, that also helped me recognize the importance of setting a tone, of making agreements, to discuss things before moving forward, right? Okay, are we all in agreement? Perfect. Now we move in.
Right.
Otherwise, immediately there's going to be conflict. Again,
a lot of good lessons about life there.
And about being a man, right? Which is when I'm afraid to confront, I'm afraid to communicate, I'm afraid to speak my mind, then I am shying away from the masculine, right? And this container, there was so many moments where it was an invitation to speak up, right? And there was a lot of moments where guys could just speak up. One of the agreements was, if you get charged, right? If someone says something that offends you, that makes you uncomfortable, you can call them out, right? And you can either do it publicly in front of the men, right? Or you can
bring it
privately,
yeah.
But that's the invitation.
Yeah, and everyone was fair game, mayor included.
That was so good.
Anyway, we won't go to all of it, but
right.
Question, pivot a little bit, but not so far off where we are. So somehow, some way, over the last number of years, you've worked with a lot of Jewish men, a lot. And not just Jewish men, but from an Orthodox background.
Correct.
I think kind of across communities, but from an Orthodox background. Some who today live religiously, some who don't, some who are on their journey towards confusion or towards clarity. Have you found any similarities? Is there Is there something going on?
For sure there's similarities. Okay. And guilt.
What by guilt you mean?
Just
Like familial, religious, both?
I don't even want to label it. They just inherently feel guilty.
Like they're vibrating at we are vibrating at the level of starting off.
Right.
We're just guilty.
There is this almost like no matter what I do, it's not good enough, or no matter what I do, it's never enough. Okay. They're pushing themselves all the time because.
Can I say something on this just because I think it's important. So, you know the writer David Hawkins, I've spoken about him a couple of times on the podcast. So he talks about, he has the map of consciousness and the kind of vibrational energy of different emotions. And just so it doesn't sound hocus pocus, okay, there is a different energy when someone is in joy and when someone is in shame. It's going, if I'm standing talking to someone who's in immense joy, and I'm not talking about rah noise, just their joy. They just had
they're vibrating at that frequency.
Yeah, they were childless for 10 years of marriage and suddenly they had a child. That person versus someone who, I don't know, just got publicly exposed, for doing who knows what. Those two people, meeting them, they're at a different energy, and without even saying much about what just happened to them, we're going to have a different mood. Okay, so it's not some hocus pocus thing. There's just these energies. So the way he breaks it out is the scale of higher and lower is life affirming or non-life affirming, right? So shame would be the least life affirming, right? Very low energy, because the lowest level of shame, kind of like you start going all the way down shame, that leads to suicidality, right? That's where it is. So it's the least life affirming. And then the most life affirming is, pure enlightenment, because at that level, there's no life, there's no death, there's just oneness. So the most life affirming, least life affirming. So he gives an example, a great example of how the same situation can be viewed differently dependent on where we are. Meaning, where are we vibrating at? Okay, so I think he talks about this in his book, Power vs. Force, but it may be another one. And he talks about viewing a homeless beggar on the street. So if someone's vibrating at the level of shame, so they may see this beggar and find them disgusting and repulsive and shameful and oh my goodness, If they're at the level of guilt, if they're viewing the world through the lens of guilt, then they may assume this guy must have done something to deserve it. Probably did something horrible, or maybe he did some crime and now he's being punished for it. If someone's at the level of fear, they may look at this person and say, like, "Oh, he's scary. I don't want to get too close to him. Something can happen." If someone's at the level of, I don't know, apathy, they may have no opinion, just right, walk right on by. Meaning, it's to the person who's viewing it. And obviously, as we go further up the levels, he talks about things like acceptance or joy. We can look at that same situation and maybe accept it. Hey, I knew this homeless guy from meetings, and I was like, hey, let me help him. I was like, let me help him get a place. And he's like, no, I don't want a place. I love it. I'm like, where do you shower? Oh, I figured out, there's places, different parks, or we're Miami, at the beach, there's always showers. It's easy. I'm like, you wouldn't want an apartment? I can help you get one. It's like a couple $100 a month. No, this is great. This is great. The only place better to live homeless in Miami is Mexico. I was like, whoa. So it was completely different than I ever would have imagined a homeless guy, feeling. But this guy he was down with it. He loved it. He thought I was crazy.
Is this a real story?
A real story. A guy I knew in meetings.
That's nuts. Okay.
No, legit.
Okay. I thought it was making an example.
No.
Crazy.
This
okay,
legitimate.
So this is a real story.
Anyway, the reason I'm saying it is because I feel like the example, David Hawkins, when he said it explains so clearly how it's not what we're seeing.
That's our own projection?
It's our own projection. Yeah, it's 100% our projection, because 10 people at different levels of the spectrum will at different energetic levels will see the same event and be so sure that this is how can you not be afraid of the homeless guy? How can you not be disgusted by them? Right. Anyway, so going back to guilt, you're saying that a lot of us are just viewing the world through the lens of guilt.
There's a few. Okay. So one is guilt. The other one is anger. The other one is resentment. The other one is fear. Okay. So those seem to be the ones that I see you squinting.
I'm just,
okay?
no, I'm just because I'm thinking.
Okay. I got you.
Processing.
But it's just my experience. Okay. And a lot of it is that brought into manhood. I'm trying to choose my words carefully, just
Why?
with a grain of salt. Just because I'm just trying to choose my words, but not to say that someone can't be 18 years old and come into manhood, okay? Because there's certain cultures, indigenous, especially when we talk about indigenous tribes, 18 years old, 19 years old, you're a man, okay? You can hunt, you can provide, okay? But the men that I work with.
So first of all, the Jews are a tribe and we're indigenous.
Okay, so there
So
you
we
have
are
it.
indigenous
Okay,
tribe. And
so okay,
according to-
perfect. Actually, then that makes sense.
Yeah,
Then
it
that makes
says
sense.
at 18, we're ready for marriage. So
Correct.
presumably if you're ready for marriage, you're
Now, let
ready
me
to
ask you a
provide,
question.
support,
Right,
protect, defend.
Do you, in today's reality, in this day and age, do you feel that an 18-year-old man is ready to get married, have children, and support a family?
It's not a question of what I feel. It's what's happening. So where I grew up, I would say men at 23 or 24, people are wondering what's going on. Why are you still single? Women at 2021, it's like, oh, what's up? How did this happen? Is everything okay here? Right. That's
So
like
your
I got
first,
married at 30, I don't even know, 32 or 33. I was like
So your first introduction,
way far gone.
your first introduction to adulthood is pressure. That's your first introduction to adulthood, which would be
Yeah, maybe I'll
Pressure.
use a different word there, obligation. Yeah, there's pressure.
If-
Meaning pressure can be a lot of different kind of pressure.
What is obligation if not
Sure,
pressure?
right. I'm just kind of refining it a little
Right.
bit. Pressure can come in a lot of different forms, right? But there's the pressure of obligation. I'm obligated to do something now. Yes.
So once they've already made that commitment, once they've already made the commitment to get married and have children, okay, at that age, and they start to feel the pressure associated with providing for a family, okay, and making a living, okay, and then in some cases there's children that are just coming one right after the other. Before I know it, I'm 25 years old. I got 3 children.
Right.
You know, I've got a mortgage. I've got all these responsibilities. And sometimes it happens so fast that they don't even realize what's happening inside their body, okay? They're trying to keep up with their responsibilities. And then one day they realize what happened?
Right.
Why am I in this situation?
It's like waking up from a dream.
Right. Like literally. Like the guys that come to me that's like, I don't know how I got there. I don't know how I got here. Okay. I've got 3 kids. I got responsibilities. I don't know how to deal with the children. Like I don't even want to be home. Okay. Because when I come home, there's too much energy. It's too intense. You know, my wife's calling me. Why aren't you home? I need help with the kids. And then I hire somebody else, but it's not enough, right? And then it's this resentment starts to build, okay? Like, what's difficult as a coach, especially when working with someone, a lot of times when someone's stuck in a difficult situation, I ask them, if you could do things differently, okay? Like if you could go back in time and do things differently, you know, what would you do differently, right? And I have to gauge it, but in most cases, that doesn't help. It doesn't help to, why would that even help me? I'm in this situation now, so I have to help them from where they're at. But because they're
Explain that. I didn't understand the distinction you made.
Okay, so if I were to say to someone who is currently struggling with a business decision that they made, or some other decision that they are trapped in. Okay. A lot of times what I'll say is, okay, if you could go back in time, right, what would you do differently? You know, like, whatever, I yelled at my kid, right?
Okay.
I was short-tempered, right? And okay, so if you could go back in time, what would you do differently, right? But in this situation, right, I have to meet them where they're at, and bringing that up might even be a little bit more disconcerting, because it's like, well, there's nothing I can do about that. I'm already married. I got these kids. What is it?
Right. And it doesn't feel like there was an option back then either.
Exactly, right?
Okay.
So what I have to help them do is resolve. There's resentment. Really, the big one is anger and resentment, because at some point they feel like they were pushed or obligated into getting married. Like if they weren't married, there was something wrong with them. Okay, and so now there's no way back. Now I feel kind of trapped, you know. And so this is where they and so once that feeling of being trapped kind of kicks in, we all know when there's pressure, when there's obligation, when there's resentment, when there's all these negative emotions, what is it that typically men do?
Shut down, numb, or rage.
So that's really what I'm working with, right? They're either using some sort of soothing coping mechanism to escape
Pornography,
numb out,
alcohol,
right?
weed.
Exactly.
Got it.
Or they are rageaholics. Like they're angry, you know? And so a lot of what I see, right? And these are just the ones that come to me. So I can't just say that it's all Jews, right? But it feels as though, because the what I'm dealing with is that resentment and that anger and that bitterness and that frustration. And I know that if they could do things differently, they would. Okay. And some of them have voiced to me, if I could do it differently, I wouldn't have listened to my parents. I wouldn't allow my community to pressure me, right? I would have waited. Okay, I would have given myself some time. I dated my wife 3 times before I got married. They'll say this: I dated her 3 times. How am I supposed to know somebody? I've only dated them 3 times. You know, and I've even worked with certain men that have been married for many, many years, and you know, they have 6 kids, and they're rabbis, and they have communities, and they hate their wives. You know, and it's like, I don't know. And I go, I don't know how to help you, because I know what you want to do. And we can try different ways, different modalities to kind of help you make peace with the decisions that you've made. But we just kind of keep ending in the same place.
Which is?
I hate my wife. We don't get along, right? We never did. Okay? She feels unfulfilled. I feel unfulfilled. But it's too late for us. And, you know, so this is what kind of like, it breaks my heart. Like, I'm speaking about it because there's certain people I can't help. I can't help them because the current rules, the current arrangement that they're under, if they were to get a divorce, if they were to actually do what their heart is telling them to do. I had one rabbi come down. He did plant medicine with me, and he came out. He goes, I knew it. The medicine was clear. It was clear. I'm leaving my wife. Right? It was like so clear.
Did he leave his wife?
No.
Right.
But in that moment, he was free. Like, he experienced for just a moment, for a few hours, for a weekend, because he was with me the whole weekend. Like, for a weekend, he experienced the idea that this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be free, right?
How common is this, what you're talking about? Meaning this...
It's a lot more common than you think, Ellie. It's a lot, man.
Like a lot of guys hating their wife.
Not hating their wives. Okay. No. That's not that common. Okay. A lot of these guys, they have really, you know, thank God, they've got really good wives. And they're trying desperately, right? The reason why they're coming to me, because they want to be better men. They want to be better husbands and better fathers.
Okay, so that was an isolated example, but...
That was an isolated... That's not the majority. The majority is that...
It is workable.
They love their wife. They love their kids, but they don't have the tools to be the husbands and the fathers that they want to be, and they can tell. right? I'm numbing out. Like when I come home, I gotta drink something before I spend time with my kids. I gotta smoke something before I spend time with my kids. You know, I'm overstimulated when I'm around my children. I don't know how to be present with them. I'm thinking about work and this and that, right? And it's so, again, for me, it feels as though, and I'm just speaking just from my experience, there needs to be further education and a little bit more time, okay, for men and women to be a little more prepared before they take that lifelong plunge. I mean, I had two conversations. No, was it two or just? I had two, or I had one main conversation this weekend with one of the attendees, one of the guys that wears that there, right? He's got this amazing wife. He's got these kids, and he's so in his head about, you know, when I shared my story about leaving being a Jehovah's Witness and being religious. I wasn't even religious. Okay.
As a teenager,
I had to go to religious services. Okay. But I never considered myself religion. I never accepted being a Jehovah's Witness. As soon as I turned 18, I was gone. And then I was out. You know, sleeping with women, drinking, partying, you know, living it up, right?
Right. If you felt like you had a full choice at 18, like, I don't know how other Jehovah's Witnesses are raised, but if you felt like you had a full choice at 18, like that was something that, like that your mom was like, okay, at 18, that can work. That's not the experience that most Orthodox Jews are talking about. Meaning it's not actually an option on the table.
What is it?
At 18 to leave.
But that's my whole thing. As a matter of fact,
meaning most people who would to make that decision would lose the relationship with their parents completely.
Correct.
That wasn't your case, right?
No.
For you, it was just wait till you're 18 to make this decision.
Right.
But afterwards, you're more than welcome in our home.
No, it was not an issue.
Right.
So it's not an issue. But at the same time, I still felt repressed in my own home, oppressed, or however you want to.
Well, certainly until 18. Yeah.
Until 18.
No, I'm not taking anything away from your experience.
No. But what I'm saying is
that experience
even still,
plus.
Right. But even still.
Then a multiplier.
But there's still rules in my house. There were still rules in my house, right? That I had
Meaning even past 18.
Yeah, there was certain,
to demonstrate respect.
My dad was very controlling, right? So even when I went out into the world, there was this level of anger and bitterness and resentment, right? Because the religion took a lot of things away from me. Yeah. I'm an adult now, and I don't believe that. But at the time, I felt like it took a lot of things away from me. And I left the house very bitter and very angry.
Got to make up for.
I made up for it, man. I made up for it in spades, right? And I just ended up hurting myself.
Right.
I just ended up with very, very dire consequences for my behavior. I ended up a drug addict, you know what I mean? And almost died a few times, to too much drugs, right? And so ultimately, I recognized that I needed rules, I needed agreements, I needed structure in my life, right? But what's so frustrating for some of these guys is like, yeah, but you got to choose and you made your own choices and you got to get out there, and I feel like I didn't get a chance to. So there's that anger and that resentment, and it's like my job is to help them make peace with it, right? Is to help them make peace with the decisions that they made, because in most cases it's, if we focus on how am I going to get out of here, you're not getting out.
How does someone make peace with it?
First, it's giving them that container to express themselves fully.
To really allow the rage.
Really allow the rage. I encourage it. Let's get angry. Okay, let's really write a fuck you letter to your mom. Okay, write a fuck you letter to your dad. Okay, let's get into this. Let's get visceral. I want you to feel it. I want you to release this. Okay, because it's trapped inside of you. What you might find is once you release this, okay, you might find the peace that you needed. You're able to resolve. And plus, I'm going to trigger your nervous system. I'm going to try and get you to push through.
Is there a difference between expression that results in a release and expression that results in kind of more of that feeling? Do you know what I mean?
No. How so? You ask the question again?
So sometimes you can express something, and when we express it, we magnify that feeling. And sometimes we express something and we release it. So let me give you an example. So let's say we're having a drink with the boys or whatever else, okay? And some frustration at your boss comes up. So you start bringing it up and saying, yeah, my boss did this, that, and he always asked me this kind of thing and that kind of thing, and he's a real jerk and whatever else. That, you leave that conversation just that a little more pissed at his boss, right? So it's the expression resulted in a magnifying of the
I got
emotion.
the question now. I got it.
Right.
I understand now. Okay, so correct. So first of all, like when I tell him to write the FU letter, okay, I premise it with, you're never going to send that. Okay, so first of all, this is not about them. This is about you. Okay, we're just going to get this out. Okay, number one, you're going to write it, but it's not for them. And then once I'm able to kind of get them to tap into that anger, right, I immediately guide them into finding that emotion that's underneath that anger. Because the anger is just a shield. It's just a protective shield. But when I come from a place of either feeling like I'm a victim or feeling any sort of weakness or feeling that
Maybe
sense,
sadness or a sense of loss or...
Yeah. The thing is that anger, that first line of defense, right? It raises their vibration. Like it makes it real easy for them to really open up. Okay, so like you say, if their vibration is a little low, and then sometimes when I see them when they start to get a little, when the anger starts to come up, right? I can see a little bit like a panic.
Right.
And then I got to reel them back in. I go, okay, pause, take a breath. Okay, let's reel it back in. Okay, tell me what's going on. Tell me let's. It's a very controlled environment.
Right.
Okay, but the thing is this: the anger and resentment is there. Okay, and underneath the anger and resentment is hurt and disappointment and a sense of, Is this it? Is this all there is?
Like a hopelessness.
Right? And this is where suicidal ideation comes in. This is where depression comes in because they feel trapped. They feel. So now that I recognize it, there's a lot of similarities, right? A lot of that anger is just masking that trapped, disappointed, sad, depressed.
Right. And once you're able to unmask that for them, then it's no longer about the emotion anymore. It's no longer about the anger anymore. It's about the emotion underneath.
Correct.
Understood.
Correct. Right. And
right. So you allow it to be expressed, but then very quickly pivot to what's beneath.
Yeah. I moved
okay, so
right into that.
That's the difference.
Right into that.
The friend that you're having a drink with, yeah, you're right. My boss also is. Right. It's never, hey, what's the fear here? Where else have you felt this way?
Correct.
How many bosses have you concluded the same thing about? Right.
But the thing is that for me, the men that I work with were not prepared for the life that they currently are managing. Okay, they have a life that they're currently leading. They have responsibilities that they're currently handling, and they just were not prepared. And they've been like drowning in a glass of water for years.
Right. It's interesting for me to hear you talking about it because you're coming from kind of the outside looking in, but really looking in. And obviously looking in at a subset, right? It's the people who are finding you. But that trapped feeling, like I know, even though I didn't live in it too long, I was out 18, 19, 20, 21, I was at 13, 14, I was already, looking for the exit. By 23, 24, I'd found the exit kind of from the community. And what you're talking about also is the kind of depths of it from marriage and children and like where it really sets in that feeling of being trapped. Like, oh my goodness, I have a life I can't run away from. What am I going to do with this? Any which way I look, I got 4 kids. I mean, there's no way to
You have
undo that.
My job becomes helping them reconcile with that, helping them embrace it. And then it becomes, I become their father. They didn't get the guidance that they needed from their dad, right? So then with the right boundaries, okay, I can facilitate that masculine role to help them, first of all, okay, recognize themselves, right? Look at what you've accomplished so far. Like you're doing it. I know you're struggling, right? But you're doing it. Okay? Like you're providing.
Doing something,
Right? And so, acknowledging them, seeing them, right? I had this one mom. She really wanted me to work with her son. I think he's 23, 24 years old. And she's like struggling with drugs. He's struggling. He's like floundering. He's not doing well at work. You know what I mean? And so I start working with this kid. And she's like, man, my mom's just pressuring me to get married and pressuring me to get married. And I'm like, okay, hold on. Again, and then I have to center myself. So I got this kid who's got problems with drugs and alcohol. He's floundering at work. And your mom wants you to get married. She's pressuring you to get married.
Right. Does sound, when you say it like that, it does sound crazy, but I know exactly
it feels crazy, right?
Right. Meaning when you reflect it back.
As a matter of fact, I started to have some success with the kid. Right? And he started opening up a little bit. Not much, because he was there mainly because his mom wanted him to be there and his brothers wanted him to be there. He wasn't, sure, he was kind of, let's just say he was 50% there, right? We had some good moments. Like we really had a few moments where it's like, okay, I think we're on the right track here, right? And all of a sudden he starts to come out of his shell. And of course his mom was checking in on me every couple of weeks. How's he doing? What's going on? This and that.
Is he ready to get married yet?
Helicopter. She sees all of a sudden he's just now starting. She goes, so do you think he's ready? And I was like, and I got to tell you, Ellie, the restraint, it was maybe 50% there, my restraint. Because I was like, ready for what? Because I wanted to hear it. Ready for what? Was he ready to get married? Guess what my response was?
I'm going to let you tell me.
Absolutely not, but like that. Absolutely not. No. Okay? He's absolutely not ready. Okay? I'm barely right now, getting this kid's trust. We haven't even touched on any of the items.
But do you understand that?
The thing is, no, but hold on, before we even go there, the idea is that the wife's going to fix him. That's the solution is, he just needs to get married, just needs a wife, and then he's going to be fixed.
It's not exactly that.
What is it?
It's that the problem is that he's not married. Meaning the problem is not the depression. The problem is not the anxiety. You didn't get called because he was depressed. You didn't get called because he was on drugs. You didn't get called.
No, that became very clear.
You got called because he was not married.
Yes, because he's not wanting to get married.
Right.
And so what I try and explain to him and to her is that, listen, in your community, if your children are not married at a certain age, you failed. Like, I got one job. I may have 12 kids, but I got one job. And my one job is to get each and every one of these kids married and having kids. Am I wrong?
I'm not going to disagree with you.
And so for me, it's like, even being on this podcast and talking about it, right? It's more of, how can we bring a little more love, a little more compassion, and a little bit more conversation where we include this child, man, because he's still a child. At 18 years old, coming out of yeshiva, and the things that I've heard about things that have happened in yeshiva with some of these boys.
Such as?
Molestation. More than molestation, it's more of these sexual encounters, boys with boys, right? Because they're just experimenting. You put these kids with raging hormones all by themselves with other boys.
Yes.
Stuff's going to go down. And, like some of the guys that I work with, there's so much guilt, so much shame associated with things that happened to them in yeshiva. And then it just got magnified when they left because they're not married, but they're acting out like crazy. It's either porn or prostitution or massage parlors or whatever.
Sexual acting out.
Sexual acting out.
A lot of sexual acting out.
A lot of sexual acting out,
Yeah.
right? And so it's like if you don't say, hey, we might have a problem here. We might have something here that needs to be looked at, and from the lens of love and compassion and understanding, not from a lens of there is a problem, they're sinners, or there's something wrong with them, or no, there's nothing more normal and natural than for a boy that turns 13 years old to feel sexual need, to have sexual needs start to happen, right? It's just this natural process where
they literally want these to kick on full gear at 18, 19 years old and have 4 babies in 3 years. So the sexuality is really wanted just at a certain time.
It's wanted,
and before then, it's viewed as disgusting. It's a big problem.
It's so taboo. It's so not discussed. And a lot of the rage, a lot of the anger is not being able to have a conversation with my parents about sex. Okay? Like literally, it's like...
Did you use the word anger there or rage?
Both, anger and rage. Like there's this like, we never talked about sex. We never discussed sex, and it was taboo.
Who was it who was saying recently? Maybe it was someone at the retreat. Like
it was somebody
really,
at the retreat.
Really angry.
Yeah, but it was like
that it was their mom.
It
was their mom that they had to discuss sexuality with because
their
their dad just wasn't available at all for it. I think I just heard someone talk about that. And how
you did,
yes.
And you'll remember as we're talking, right? It was one in particular who was sharing about it. When he was doing the sacred drama,
mm-hmm.
he unleashed
fury.
all of that. Oh, like he goes, you weren't there for me. I had to talk about mom, about my sexuality. Do you know how embarrassing that was? And there was and for me, it's like,
right. That was not rage. That was like fury. That was like,
I don't know.
Yeah.
Potatoes.
Not to me. Not when you're a connoisseur of this.
Okay. All right.
Of
but
anger.
Here's the thing. I forget because I lose track of how many times I have that conversation.
Right.
It is probably if you want to know what the what's the word I'm looking for?
Common denominators.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you. Oh, beautiful. Thank you. It is late. The common denominator is these boys got married too soon. Okay. They were not prepared for the responsibilities of being a husband and a father. And many of them have not been able to work through the sexual traumas that they experience in yeshiva, which happens a lot.
So you know what I'm thinking about now? Besides the fact that it's fascinating, even though we speak a lot, we never had this conversation. I didn't know what you were going to answer to these questions, like going into this level of detail. And anyone who's listening to you, they can disagree, but they know you know. Meaning the nuances that you're talking about, you would not understand about the community unless you knew. You couldn't get this from 1.5 clients. You'd have to drill into real people's stories to understand this. So what's interesting is, I don't know if it's somewhat true for sure in the community which I grew up in, the Chabad community. It seems to be this magnified by 1,000 in the Satmar community, which may not be anything relevant, is the father wounds, like just on steroids. And I think everyone has father wounds to a degree, but there's like some serious ones. And it seemed to me from a number of people that I've met from the Satmar community, it seems to be like very, very, very strong there. But regardless of it being strong there, it seems to be pretty uniform. But what's interesting is that what you're talking about is the beginning of eventually acquiring that. What do I mean by that? This same guy who you're talking to at, let's say, 25, 26, 27 years old, unaddressed, what are their kids going to feel? Neglected, uncared for, father distant, unavailable. And when they do experience him, they'll experience him as volatile, rageful, unpredictable. So it's not only the struggle of the person you're talking to, it's kind of a pattern that can be going back a very, very long time, because you're seeing both sides of that. You're seeing the children who are now adults, the adult children who feel neglected by dad, and then them feeling choiceless in their own marriage and the resentments and everything else. Meaning it's such a straight line. Like, mathematically, this is the only place it can get you. Like, these two things are just going to work perfectly. Force someone into marriage. I want to say force someone in. It's essentially what happens is the feeling is that I never made the choice and you knew. I didn't know, but you knew.
Ooh, that landed.
I was just kind of following what you said to do. Oh, it's time to date. Okay, great. We finished high school. Then where do we go? Rabbinical college, and where do we go afterwards? Date. On a date. What do we do on a date? It's been the 5th date. What's your decision? Hey, what is with these 2-hour dates? What's going on? Come on, keep them short. Keep them brief. Any more than 5 is already, we're getting into problematic territory. You're going to get a reputation for playing around with the other sex. And then eventually ending up in this situation where you have 3 or 4 kids, 25, 26 years old. You wake up from the dream and you're like, wow, all I did was follow exactly what they said. And here I am. I never knew what I was doing, but you did. And how do I know you know? Because you were in the same situation 20 years before, but because of reputation and other reasons, you decided what you said was so freaking spot on about the job being like the one job, just to marry off the kids.
That's the one job. That's the one job.
Like when you said that, I know like anyone listening in is like, okay, Omar knows. Like, because that's what it is. It's like all my kids are out of my home. I'm done my job, and now we can have nachas, if you know what that. I'm sure you heard the word.
Yeah, pride.
Yeah.
I know, it's funny. I'm hanging out with all these Jews. Like, how do you know all this? I go, I actually do work with a few Jews. I use Lech Lecha all the time.
Lech Lecha?
Yeah.
That's right.
In my teachings all the time. Like, where I go, the journey of Abraham. Like, I go, listen, sometimes you need to embrace the teachings. Okay. Abraham left his family to the land that God had waiting for him. All right. And you're still smack dab in the middle of it. Okay. You might want to consider it's time for you to make your own Lech Lecha.
You know what's wild? I'm 99.9% sure that we're recording this on a Sunday evening, and the chapter of the portion of the Torah is called Lech Lecha.
I would not be surprised in the least. There hasn't been one coincidence this whole weekend.
I'm 99.9% sure. 99.
But here's the one.
We got to fact check Tyler, someone.
But I'll tell you what. Yeah. You check.
Confirmed.
Okay.
We've got a fact check.
We go. Okay.
That's wild.
Here's the thing. Here's the beautiful part. Today in the men's this weekend, one of those men, the ones that felt like he was FOMO and missing out, had such a transformational breakthrough with all the different exercises. And him and I worked together a lot. We had a lot of conversations. He had a complete turnaround about how he viewed his wife and how he viewed his life in this retreat.
Oh, neat.
And he shared beautifully in tears about how much he valued and loved his wife, and that all that noise in his head about what he could have done or should have done.
Sexually?
Yeah, just
all the sexual
to
experiences
go
he
out and
missed
do
out on.
whatever you want. You know what I mean? Like there was a few guys sharing at the retreat about how they went out and they were with women and they were partying, and
Yeah, yeah.
it's always the same story. It always starts the same way. It always ends the same way. There isn't ever, oh yeah, and I was, you know, like I had all this money and doing all these drugs and with all these women, you know, and I'm still doing it, guys. I'm living the dream. Said no one ever. There's a beginning, a middle, and a hard ending to that. And there was a beautiful, beautiful speech at the end of the retreat that really helped that other member tap in to his realization that, yeah, sure, things didn't go the way that if I could do them differently, I would. But then he shared some things about his wife, about who she was and how she is with him. And I was like, and I looked at him and I said, you may not realize this right now.
You got a good one.
Man, God gave you a gift. He delivered you a woman that most men in your community would die for. And I said it in such a way, I can't remember, the moment was there. There was a lot of buildup to when I landed on that moment, right? And there was a lot of metaphysical kind of talks because, you know, he's done medicine. And so I could go from that place, right? But it landed. He broke into tears, and he connected with a wife in such a deep level. So the silver lining on this is those men that are still in those, my job is to help them, reconcile that if you do believe, right? If you're a practicing Jew, one of the teachings is that the soul agreed to come down as this vessel, as this version of himself, right?
And
So
understanding the challenges that they would encounter.
understanding that this is going to be the challenge. And one of my
That
challenges...
you were going to wake up at 27.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly. And so helping them understand that immediately motivates them to continue to do this work, okay? Because this work is going to, liberate them from the anger and the bitterness and the resentment. And once they're liberated from that, then they can freely love their children and love their wife and really appreciate what they have. And so that's really the shift. The shift is that the men that are going through this, they're not like their father. Their father didn't go and get counseling or coaching or therapy or medicine.
The ones who are coming to you,
the
correct.
ones that are coming to me, the ones that are coming to your retreats, the ones that are coming to you, right? It's because they know they do not want to hurt their children. And they do not want their children to go through what they went through, right? So they're seeking that help outside of the religion because they know they're not going to get the help they need within the religion. They're just going to be told, well, this is just the way it is. This is how it works. So you just follow the directions, okay? All right, and everything's going to be fine.
Right.
And then they're like, wait a minute, I did that already.
And everything's not
And
fine.
everything's not fine. Everything's
Right.
really, really bad, okay?
Right. Right. Yeah.
You know what the cool thing is? And you had the
But you know what
6 weeks.
that? Yeah, go ahead.
No, the cool experience is like I have some of the guys that do, especially the ones that do plant medicine. It's not all the time, but I would say over 50% of them, the ones that are struggling with Judaism or struggling with religion, and it's usually the same thing. It's like I pray every day. I go to shul. I go to synagogue. Shabbos every weekend. I can't feel God. And I go, don't worry. I'm going to serve you up some medicine. I promise you're going to feel God. We laugh about it, but they come out. I felt him.
You have a lot of people coming to Costa Rica.
I got a lot of people coming
Right.
to Costa Rica to do medicine.
I did it. I did it last year between the Jewish holidays of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. I think it was like September timeframe last year, and it was magic. Beautiful, beautiful weekend.
It was magical. And the thing is, I've watched you reconnect with your Judaism and love it, and I've had guys come down, we're in that same boat. And man, when we were sitting there after, like on day 2 of ceremony, we're sitting inside the ceremony room after they come out. And they're talking to me about the Torah, and they're talking about these teachings, and they're like, I saw it in my journey. It was real. I could feel it, right? And then we're getting into it, and this is how I'm learning. I learned most of my Judaism, right, during a plant medicine ceremony, because they're just like, all of it's coming out of them.
Right, suddenly like, seeing it in a different light.
Man,
than the truth of it.
I love Shabbos, and I love it. It's like there's other things, not so much. There's all these rules. Okay, I'm gonna put these to the side. But this I love. And then boom, they're just like reconnected and reinvigorated with Judaism. And I even remember, this has helped me so much, even with my own religious traumas, my own religious experiences. Like at first, I thought that it was my job to liberate the Jews. Okay. And then I remember going into a plant medicine ceremony, and Mama Ayahuasca said, "Stop trying to liberate the Jews. That's not your job."
What do you mean by liberate the Jews?
In other words, like I thought that because I left my religion.
Oh, you're supposed to help.
It was like, maybe they're coming to me because they want to leave their religion. And Mama's Ayahuasca said, "No, it's not your job to liberate the Jews. You respect their views. You respect their medicine. Okay? You hold that ground."
Oh, right? She shook you up.
Oh, she shook me up. She shook me up, right? And when I came out of that, right, it was funny because I was in a journey. I was plant medicine journey. Right next to me was a Jew, like one of my clients, right? And I looked at him and I said, "Listen, I know where you're at, and I know where you're struggling, and I'm here to support you." And the medicine told me, embrace your religion, embrace your life, you were born a Jew. Okay, you're never not going to be a Jew. And the medicine helped me see that, right? And so from that, my view has not been about it just completely 180 in an instant, right? It was supporting them in their journey, helping them reconcile, right? That trapped, imprisoned, I made the biggest mistake of my life feeling, right? And get them to a place where they can appreciate Judaism on their terms, appreciate their wife, appreciate their kids, right? And get to a place where they can really embody all of it, right? From a place of love instead of resentment.
So what I was going to say earlier, what I started saying was that very often this resentment and anger isn't actually towards their mother and father. It's towards God. It's expressed as towards God, because that's the way I've seen it with a lot of people who come to me, and with myself as well, is that because we were told that this rule is God's rule, so then when it stops working out, we don't think someone distorted the rule. We trust the person that this is actually what God said and God wants. And we're like, why did you do this to me? Why did you put me through hell? And I had a realization once. It's like God gave us free choice. Literally, this is the gift to humanity. It's a gift and it's a challenge for sure. But that's the beauty of being human. And so many of these religious ideas are trying to rob the person of their free choice. It's not called free choice if you could do it and you lose your family and you lose your friends and you lose your community and you're shunned and you're disgraced. That's a hell of a choice right there. That's a freaking uphill climb just to have the choice to do something different than you were pushed towards. So once I realized that hey, God gave us free choice, and this thing, whatever it is, religion, institution, community, I don't want to use religion in this context, this community is attempting to rob me of free choice, then that's not God. But my resentment, the way I expressed it, was towards God. But then I felt like if I expressed it towards God, I would be punished by God because I was told that God was punitive. So I'm not kidding. I'm not joking. I once said that I think, what you said about writing an FU letter to parents. Yeah. So I recommend doing it to God. So I was like, how can you curse God? Because we're not cursing God. It's a fake God that was told to this person that it is God, but of course it's not. The whole thing is ridiculous. And
the reason why I'm laughing is because that's exactly where I was at. I was furious with God. I was so angry with God. I remember one day, middle fingers up into the air and going, "Come and get me." You know what I mean? Like,
because you thought God was who Jehovah's Witness told you it was.
Yes. That's why I was like these beautiful, these synchronicities that we experience, right? But You know, the point is that the reason why God gave us free will is because, you know, we chose this experience, whatever experience. I chose my experience, you chose your experience. And the whole purpose, this whole journey, is to wake up from that dream, from the dream of these rules, right? That this is who God is and this is what you're supposed to do. And this, you've been programmed part of it's like an escape act, right? Where I have to escape the programming installed inside of me. And there's little clues along the way. There's these little clues along the way. And then all of it, and then there's tools, right? Like all of a sudden somebody puts some ayahuasca in my way, you know, and somebody puts a life coach in my way, and then somebody puts a podcast in my way. And all these things, they gradually start to like, you start to doubt certain things. You start to question certain things, right? There's these, they call them the aha moments, right? These are all little, and again, this is my own interpretation, right? But I always see God as, you know, he's putting all these little clues, right? He's putting all these clues, like, you know,
well, you're trying to put
a fun game. You know what I mean? You're taking it too seriously. Okay. It was just a game. You were always supposed to figure out that you were trapped. Okay. But you just got kind of lost in the game. So I'm going to keep giving you little clues. Let me put this person in front of them, and then let me put this medicine in front of them, and let me put this podcast in front of them, and then maybe this big sign, billboard, say God loves you. You know what I mean? Let me just sprinkle these things on, and then all of a sudden, you find a moment where it just cracks. And usually for me, it was with ayahuasca. You know, I always suspected that what I believed about God was true. And then I remember I was doing ayahuasca for the first time, and I'm right in the middle of the ceremony, and I hear myself going, I knew it! I knew it!
Yeah. You know what I think my favorite description now of ayahuasca or some other plant medicines is that we get to see what we would see if we died. So we kind of get a second chance at life in life itself. And it's like, oh man. Like if I didn't see, like if I didn't see some of the things I saw in ayahuasca.
Absolutely.
There were some things I've experienced, and I was like, I can't imagine living one more day, never one more day, one more hour, looking at the world in that way. Like, how did it get me? How did it get me? And then just to be able to have that tool, and there's many such tools, will just break us open a little bit, and we just know it. When we know it, we know it. It's like, how do you know you weren't tricked by ayahuasca? Like, it's true. You feel it. You feel it from your head to your toes. It just kind of flows. You're like, oh.
Well, what's funny is the minute as I've done so much ayahuasca, as soon as you said, how do you know you're not being tricked by ayahuasca? My whole thing is, the reason why you're asking me this question is because you've been tricked by whatever it is that you've been tricked by for many, many years. Okay? Somebody put a veil over your face, whether it's religion, education, family, you know, whatever it is, okay? No one ever asks, was I duped? Was I tricked? Okay? In their current existence, right? All of a sudden, I'm taking ayahuasca. I got a whole new lens, and that's the trick. You know, the trick is that all of a sudden that the medicine is making you see something that's not there. Meanwhile, you've been believing something that's not there for a long time.
I hear it. So help us bring this together, because it's kind of interesting where we started, right? Where we spoke about the retreats and how the rules kind of kept us safe.
Yes.
And provided a space of freedom.
Yeah.
And then we went into religion, and a lot of what you experienced where the rules did the opposite.
Correct.
And beat us up. So what's the difference in terms of using rules to? This
is how we're going to close. This is how, because it's beautiful. It's exactly. We sat around that circle. We sat around that fire, and we made agreements together. Okay? Versus we come into this circle and someone sits, okay, gentlemen, here are the rules. Here's what we're going to do in the morning. Here's what we're going to do in the afternoon. Here's what you're going to do at night. If you don't like it, there's the door. We all sat around, and it was a constant. Okay, so here's one of the agreements. Does anyone have a problem with this agreement? Well, I don't know about this. I don't know about that. Okay. Well, we're going to create a solution for that. So here's a solution we're going to create for that. Everyone felt heard. Everyone felt contained. Everyone felt like they contributed to the agreements and to the rules. And as soon as they did,
Right. It wasn't like every single one was negotiable, right? There was one.
but some of them didn't need to be negotiable.
Right. There was one that I introduced and I said, like, we can change it, but then you'd literally have to tackle me. But still, the one was introduced. It was, we're willing to hear feedback on it in terms of the way that this affects you. Meaning there was space to weigh in.
There it is. That's the word. Okay, there was space to weigh in.
Right, the individual mattered.
There's no space to weigh in when you're an 18-year-old kid coming out of yeshiva and your mom's going, I got a date for you.
Have you heard the saying, if there's no weigh-in, there's no buy-in?
There you have it.
That's what we're going to name this podcast. Let's just end it. This is good.
I love you, Ellie.
Maybe 2 more. Thanks so much.